everybody, and welcome back to the episode of Tapas Talkies. I'm your host, Preeti Vikram, the founder of Tapas Progressive Educational Institution. I'm really excited today to be in conversation with Shwetha Saran. A warm welcome to you, Shwetha.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be.
So, to all our viewers, I'd like to introduce a little bit about you. Shwetha has been writing about education for um, the Mint, the Hindu, and a lot of other periodicals and publications. She's extremely passionate about the right practices in education. She created a group called the Bangalore Schools. It's a Facebook group which has a very strong member base of both the schools as well as the parents. So I believe that this group, with her friends that she has started, it's like a conduit between parents and schools, and there are great conversations happening and being moderated by Shweta on this group. So she is here to share her perspective from both sides, that is from the parents as well as the schools. So once again, a very warm welcome, Shweta, and I am excited to have great conversation ahead today.
Thank you, Preeti. I'm really, it's an honor to be here with you because I know what a wonderful educator you are and how you work with policymakers so well. And the extent of your reach is just amazing. So I'm really honored to be here with you.
You're too kind, Shweta. Thank you so much. Um, So I'll start from what has happened in the last year because that's the elephant in the room, and we really need to discuss about that first. Get it out of the way. I think the world has changed, especially in the education industry. The whole world has changed in terms of how we are learning and how we are ensuring that children are learning. Um, so the first question is from your moderation of the group on Facebook. Do you think that schools handled the whole transition from physical to virtual well? Do you think we could have handled it better? And uh, what are your thoughts? What are your some observations about it?
So you're right, Preeti. It was an unbelievably unprecedented event that we witnessed. Has not happened in the recent past. And when it happened, obviously there was a lot of confusion and a lot of fear among all of us as parents, especially. But I should say that the teachers and the educators really took to it very seamlessly and quickly. I know that my daughter's school adapted to it fairly well because we have been using some technology in the classroom. And I have heard from many parents that the teachers have really worked hard to, you know, shift to the online medium. And we should remember that not many teachers were familiar with technology, let alone Zoom. They were not really, well versed with that much of technology, and suddenly you have to make a leap to Zoom or MS Teams. Many schools use MS Teams, which is very different from Zoom. And I should say that the teachers have really worked hard. So I have a lot of friends who are parents, I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and I can say that the teachers really put in a lot of work, and the school leaders also tried to make it, more to make it easier for the parents. For instance, my a friend who was a principal said that she found that that parents really wanted a lot of social and emotional learning modules to be integrated into the online curriculum because children are really struggling. You're always in front of a screen, you don't get to see your friends, you don't get to go out. And as outdoor education, it is education when you go out and when you experience the world. So a lot of children were facing a lot of stress and just generally, it was hard. So the schools really stepped up and they learned to make the teaching more interactive. They learned to make it more interesting. So I think that even the teaching methods evolved. People became more creative in their teaching. I did hear that for some parents it was a little stressful because it varies from school to school, but on the most part, and even on the group, a lot of parents were very happy with the way the teachers and the schools were making the shift. And and when online learning happened, we saw a lot of parents realizing that this interaction was better than no interaction at all, because children get to see their friends in school, from school. they interact a lot, and it wasn't just studying, it was so much more. So I think on the whole, it was really, well handled by all the teachers and the schools, I should say.
Fantastic. So nice to hear that. I think it's gratifying when the teachers' hard work and efforts are being appreciated, right? I'm sure that the teachers will really like that. Parents have responded so well. Um, so when we talk of this whole change, what comes to my mind is that there were some people who very quickly adapted to this change, and for, like you said, for some parents it was a lot more stressful. And during the pandemic, I've seen that the people were divided into this exactly two groups: people who adapted and people who needed to be pushed to adapt, or they had those challenges adapting. And I think that the greatest skill, if we are teaching in a classroom, should be to be adaptable, and that is what is going to help our children in the future. And if anything we've learned from the pandemic, it is that let's be resilient and let's be open for change. So that has been my greatest takeaway from the pandemic. So Shweta,
Yes,
sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
I agree. Yes.
Okay. My next question is that, great, we've had a whole year which has been maybe a bit of online, a bit of through calls, and we've had different strategies for different people work out. But now we're almost at the verge of starting the next academic year, and schools are looking to reopen soon. Do you think this transition from online back to offline is going to be easy? And what do you think are the parents' biggest concerns about sending their children back to school?
So I think that the transition from online to offline is going to be a little tricky. So I was talking to my boss the other day, and she was saying that in Seattle, she's in Seattle, and she was saying that the children have started twice, thrice a week school, and apparently, the children found it a little different to be offline and to do their work. She was saying that they were constantly looking for someone to help them with things. So I think as parents, we tend to always, here is this paintbrush, here is this, we are like giving them that too much of support, I guess. So they were a little at sea, is what she said. And I think this is very interesting because as in school they learn to be independent and they learn to do things on their own, whereas we tend to be a little lovingly supportive of our children. But I think, yeah, the transition is going to be a little it's a little interesting, but I think children will definitely take to the offline a scenario very easily, because I think they crave interaction. They always want to build things with their hands, they want to meet their friends. And I also think that slightly older children, at least my daughter is about 10, they do understand social distancing, they do respect boundaries, they are able to understand that you need to maintain that distance and be careful, so they do realize that. I think when it comes to parents' expectations, they are a little worried about the safety norms when schools open up. And I imagine that when schools do open up, it will be gradually, from maybe twice a week to more, more classes per week. And I'm sure that all the, precautions will be adhered to, because I think that is still important, and that's the case wherever we go, right? I mean, we have to be safe. It's not just a school. So I think that I think the most parents are worried about the safety angle and about whether it's safe. But a lot of parents, I think, at least in the group I've seen, that many parents do want the school to open at some point soon, because it is hard for children, it is hard for us, especially parents who are working and even otherwise. So while there are a lot of parents who are worried about safety, there are an equal number of parents who say, we do want the schools to open. So that's kind of the worry. A lot of parents message me, especially parents of very young children, children who are in LKG or UKG, and say, I don't know if I will get admission in class 1 next year. I don't know if my child has the skills, like he is he or she has, you know, he or she has crossed the developmental milestones that a child needs to get into grade one. What if he's not, suitable for grade one? And I tell them honestly, it really doesn't matter as long as you have been engaging the child creatively and constructively at home. Those things will, happen. And I think a lot of principals I spoke to say that they will definitely help the child, overcome these difficulties, even small children, because it's all about helping the child bridge those gaps. That's what schools do. So I think these are so many of these concerns the parents have, and I can understand it's not easy. So yeah, this, just is what's going through people's minds.
But thank you so much. You raised some very, very valid concerns. So, three things that I'd like to take away from that. First thing is about supporting the children, and then, having somebody, like you said, handing them the paintbrush or handing them the pencil. They've all had it too easy for the last couple of days, right? So, I mean, last couple of months. So, obviously, there will be some amount of transition time, and having them come to school twice a week and staggering the opening of the school should help settle that down a little bit. But from from the point of view of safety, I also feel that probably schools like Tapas will have a bit of an advantage because we are smaller in size and we obviously can ensure more safety. So I'm excited because Tapas can offer that, and I'm hoping that will be to our advantage. But most importantly, Shweta, from what we just discussed, um, as educators, probably we need to be very, very aware and conscious of the learning loss that has happened in the last year. And so, having some amount of bridging is so important. And I think all principals should be looking at what's that bridging going to look like. Maybe the first 2 months or the 3 months will really be about bridging, like you said, the junior and the senior KG students, if they're coming into the first grade, and these are students who will see massive changes, right? So I think that's a great takeaway. Thank you for sharing that, Shweta.
Thank you.
The next question is a little bit more tricky because I know you've gone through this process yourself as a parent. What factors do you think parents consider while choosing a school?
So it's interesting, Preeti, because I have had many discussions and many events that I've conducted titled How to Choose a School for Parents. So initially, I would, I saw a lot of parents looking at specific details like how close the school is to to their house, because they don't want the child to travel too much. They want the child to also play and to be purposefully engaged at home. There are other factors that they would consider, like the how I think many of them still look at the if the school is popular or not. If it's a big name, they look at safety, especially if it's preschool. But a lot of them look at which board the school is affiliated to. And again, it doesn't really play that much of a part when the child is 3 or 4, because this is a human being you don't know anything about.
Right.
He or she is a new person. We don't know what he or she wants to, you know, be when they grow up. So, in general, I think parents are confused. Many of them are confused. They don't know what to do. And now we have so many different curricula and syllabuses, and parents are always asking, which is better. And they ask which is better for Indian competitive exams. That's a question that gets asked a lot. They ask, but yeah, but also interestingly, a lot of questions about alternative schools. A lot. We have been getting many questions about alternative schools in Bangalore. And I know for a fact that the articles I write on alternative schools do the best in terms of viewership. So that means that there's a definite interest among parents in alternative learning spaces. Definitely. It is really wonderful to see, because I created the group in 2012 when it was mostly about parents wanting a certain type of school, a big brand. But now it is slowly evolving to parents saying, I'm looking at very different kinds of schools. And have parents reach out, at least 3 or 4 parents reach out a week, and many of them ask about alternative schools. So that's a great thing to see. And I also believe that parents these days are looking to connect with the school founders. So a parent recently, she wanted to go to a well-known school in Bangalore. She had heard great reviews. She had talked to many parents, and then she went to meet the founders. And she felt that somehow there was no connection. She didn't really feel that this was a school that her child would fit in, even though every other, you know, every other criteria on the list was ticked off.
Right.
Somehow she felt that the philosophy really didn't strike her as something that she really related to. And I felt that that was such a really astute way of gauging a school, that you are looking at something more than just details like how many children in a class or how big the campus is and how, so I think that parents, their preferences are changing, but they still are looking at the compulsories like, how good is there. So a lot of them look at extracurricular activities, a lot of them look at teachers, the quality of teaching. But I think that definitely there is a shift towards looking at holistic education. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. I agree with you, especially I think the last 1 year, parents have been witness to how their children are learning. So that has really helped open up their eyes in terms of, okay, there can be more to learning than just, sitting in front of the teacher for 9 hours in a day. Uh, so I do see that shift, but long before that also, like you have pointed out, Bangalore has become a hub for alternative education, right? And I see that a lot of parents are now exploring because they know there are successes. There are schools which are running from the last 20, 30 years in the alternative space. And I'm just so happy that this mindset has started to shift so slowly. And I'm so excited as that Tapas is in that space of providing that kind of holistic education and alternative education. And it's great to be in that space. And it was interesting when you mentioned about the parent wanting to meet the founders and that whole disconnect that happened. I want to tell you, Shweta, that at Tapas, one of the ways in which we ensure that there is a complete understanding between the parents and us is to have the parents fill out a thought alignment form. It seems I don't know. It seems like too much to do, but both the father and the mother have to answer questions about their choice and why they are choosing certain things, and we see whether we are in alignment. We really need to know whether they understand what they're getting into and we understand whether they are the right fit for the school. And it's so important. I cannot stress how important that is. And having been in the preschool industry for so long, you're right, parents do ask us questions on so what next and which school should I choose. And I always tell them whatever you feel is the best fit for you, that, like you rightly said, that's exactly what we need to look for. Everything else will fall into place once they look at that. So thank you so much for that answer.
Yeah, and I also think that, Preeti, it's not easy to find a school that meets all your criteria. There will always be something that you may not find in that school, but I think it's important to prioritize. And as for alternative schools gaining traction in the city, I really agree with you. And in fact, many of the alternative schools are full for admissions. Full. They don't have admissions till 2022, 2023. So I think in another 5 years, Tapas will face the same, hopefully. And you will, it's actually wonderful to see that, it is a wonderful thing to see.
Absolutely, I agree with you, and thank you so much for your wishes. It means a lot. So that's a natural segue for my next question. That why do you think there is such a shift for parents from a conventional, traditional school to an alternative space? What do you feel are some of the shortcomings of a traditional system of school?
So I am from a traditional system of schooling, and I would always think, hey, I turned out okay. What could be wrong with the traditional schooling? I actually find many things that are problematic about traditional schooling. One is the fact that, children were not really encouraged that much. There was a lot of, how can I put it, a lot of standardization of education. There was no pluralization of education. So learn so differently, I look at things so differently, and yet this one shoe fits all approach was difficult for children. So many children who learn differently would slip through the cracks and would not really reach their potential. That's one thing. Second is, I think that, with so much focus on mental health and so much focus on social and emotional intelligence, I found that traditional schools, and again, I don't speak for all schools, I'm sure that there were a lot of traditional mainstream schools that are sensitive. I found that my school was very stifling in terms of, the way the teacher would always want us to listen to him or her, how we could not express certain views, how they would, respond to us if we got something wrong. Those things still hold me back to this day, you know and I find that it is hard for me to ask questions as a journalist. I'm a journalist and I should ask hard, tough questions, but I find it so hard to ask questions because I am so conditioned to sit in front of a blackboard and take in everything that's been handed to me. So I think these two are the absolute problems I see with mainstream education. And again, I don't, I'm sure that there are a lot of mainstream schools that are doing good work and children who are happy there. But I honestly feel that with this pandemic, which has really thrown things off kilter, we are seeing so many changes, so many things that are happening overnight. I feel that a more progressive education system will equip our children for the future, which is very uncertain. I have a friend, a journalist who writes on future of work. She actually covers it actively in India, and the changes are going to be massive, right from the kind of jobs that will exist in 10, 15 years to the skills that you will need to do these jobs. So you will have to work on these skills, you have to relearn, you have to adapt, you have to unlearn, which is so important. And as a journalist who's working in this space now, I find it really hard to unlearn because I'm so conditioned to how I was taught. So I think that the limitations of a mainstream and traditional education is that one, of course, like I said, it's very standardized. Two is they don't really encourage you to question and to express yourself. And three is the social and emotional well-being angle, which I think a progressive school looks at you as an individual who is part of the world and who has dreams and hopes. And honestly, an exam is the easiest thing you'll do in life. You are going to have much worse challenges thrown at you. An exam seems very easy in comparison. So I think a school should equip you for the challenges of the future.
Absolutely. How well put. That's so nice to hear. I think top three things, you've summed it up so beautifully. Uh, I remember in my school days, there was one question in history where it said that in your own words, sum up the, you know, consequences of battle of so and so. And so the question, in all fairness, said in your own words. So I wrote in my own words. The book came flying to me in the classroom and she just threw it at me because she was so upset I'd written it in my own words and not replicated what was in the textbook. So there are hundreds of cases like that, I'm sure. And somehow I feel that we are what we are despite our education and not because of our education. So many times that I feel it's despite our education. So you're right in saying that. And when we look at what you said about the world changing, and you're right in terms of it being so uncertain. And one of the acronyms I feel that is being thrown around so often is the that we are in a VUCA world, and it's so volatile, it's so uncertain, and so how are we going to help children adapt to those, right? And this is one anecdote that I love sharing. About 6 7 years ago, I was at a conference of educators, the heads of schools and principals, and who's who in the audience of about 350 people. There was this one 13-year-old student who had come from Riverside Academy, Ahmedabad.
Yeah.
He went on the stage and he asked just one question, which was he said, today we didn't know about the jobs that exist today 10 years ago, and we don't know, like you said, the jobs that are going to exist 10 years later. So what are you educating me for? And that's like such a penny dropping moment, right? I mean, so you it makes you just step back and think about what are we really doing in the education system. And stemming from that kind of an ideology, Tapas is trying to ensure that holistic education takes place. Children are learning more by doing rather than by just listening to the teacher. So I hope that in this endeavor we are able to bring up more resilient children who are able to face the VUCA world, right? So uh, that's what I think about how education should be. I think one last question to you, Shweta, is that I know you visited Tapas and you've been kind enough to go through our website. Um, what are what are your views on how our journey, and what are your views on what we have set out to do? What do you think of the education at Tapas?
So I have been fortunate enough to witness Tapas coming into existence this last few months. I have known you and Shruti for so long. I know both of you to be such wonderful and passionate educators. I know that both your children study in progressive, schools. So what I really loved about Tapas, and I was there for the open house as well, the online open house. I visited Tapas. So there are so many things that I love about Tapas. One is that it is you want it to be apart from the fact that it's a progressive school. I really love how you want it to be an experiential learning center for children. I love that. I love the different philosophies that bind the education together at Tapas. And there are so many things when you spoke at the open house I really love. For instance, the interdisciplinary learning that is going to be there at Tapas. So the world is vastly interdisciplinary today. I mean, it's not just, STEAM is such an important acronym today. I mean, for those who don't know, it's a science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So we bring art into this, and it's such a powerful powerful way of learning. So I love that Tapas takes such a holistic view of education instead of just looking at it as subjects. I also love that you put the child at the center, because it is so important for the child to have control of his or her learning and to steer it forward. And looking at the website as well, I love the different aspects of Tapas, Astitva, Prana, Disha, Tattva, and Chakra. I mean, how they come together. And for instance, Chakra is the curriculum, and again, like, it is circular. It comes back to not just in terms of the subjects. I feel that it's difficult to just divide learning into subjects, but also in terms of the how sometimes you may have to go back to something you learned in the lower grade and revisit it. It's not just I finished studying this and I moved to the next. It's not. You need to constantly revisit and constantly remember what you learned. It's cyclical in a way. So I love those. And I have known you, Preeti, and I know how instrumental you were in you were part of the committee that had to devise the framework for online education. It was so beautifully put together. I felt that it was so balanced in terms of considering both screen time as well as developmental goals. It was perfectly balanced. So I think that with you at the helm and with such a concept as Tapas, I just love the direction that it's going to go, the direction it's going to take, and also your interest and belief in the NEP. I think that's brilliant. And I can kind of set the benchmark for other schools to follow. So I think I'll take up more than your time if you were asked to ask me what I love about Tapas. And a small incident when I came to your space. I was there with Shruti upstairs. There were these murals, up on I think the art space. Yeah. And Shruti said that, we want the children to see these images of, someone dancing or singing and imitate them. I thought that was just amazing, because I feel that there's so much of learning is not just sitting in front of, or reading a book. It's also so kinesthetic, and it's so, you learn in so many different ways. So I just love that idea a lot. So I really hope to see, how you go ahead, and I'd really like to, stay in touch with you and follow Tapas's progress.
Superb. Thank you so much. I think you've understood us so beautifully, and thank you so much for those warm words. And we are also very conscious that when we start a school like this, we are making a commitment to the community. So we definitely want to ensure that we are able to live up to that. One thing I would like to add is that Tapas is an inclusive space, and we are tied up with We Nurture Foundation for ensuring that we are able to provide the best care possible for all students. So that's one more thing I just like to add at the end. And it has been a wonderful time chatting with you in the last. I don't even know the time, so it has been wonderful chatting with you for about an hour, I believe now. I don't know how time flew. Um, we are very thankful for your support, and we will look forward to more such interesting conversations going forward as well. So, thank you so much, Shweta. And till next time, I'm also very excited that you will be hosting a few more of our Tapas Talkies, the entire discussions with a few of the other people we have identified. So, I'm extremely excited to welcome you on board Tapas Talkies. And I hope that you will have as much fun with all the other speakers as I've had talking to you today. So thank you once again, and till the next time, bye.
Thank you, Preeti.
Bye.
Bye.